It's going to get pretty big, so we'll have to get that shortly, probably on a flash drive. Because we're going to get that posted. We do have a couple people requesting it who couldn't make it. So.
Right. Okay. All right.
Yes.
All right, we have 16 folks. One person.
Yep, double check.
Yeah, I'm admitting additional folks.
Given one of them was one of our council people, that's probably a good idea.
Oh, I think we're good. Okay.
And I'll say, if I look like I'm looking at sideways, believe it or not, I am actually looking at you guys because I have my camera's over here. The screen where everybody else is over here. So
Yeah. Okay. Another gentleman coming in.
We'll give everybody about 1 more minute to come in. That'll be 35. We'll be about 5 minutes after start time, and we'll get started shortly. My name is Mark Austin. I'm the town engineer for the town of Hamden. Just for some brief introductions, our other speakers will be introducing themselves shortly. And if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat for everyone. And we'll also open up for questions later after we get towards the end of the presentations. But if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat function that you'll find at the bottom of the screen. Rich, are you just about ready?
Yeah, I'll turn my camera back on.
Let's honor everybody who came in on time and those who were early. Again, my name is Mark Austin, town engineer for the town of Hamden. We're here to present and get public input for the Walkable Sidewalks project for the town of Hamden. This is a public involvement meeting. We're here to take your input. We're at preliminary design. So we're about 30% done with the design, and this is preliminary. So we still have the opportunity to make some changes. We have the opportunity to present you with information and gather information from you should you have something that you'd like for us to know to assist us in further developing the town's design. We're accompanied tonight by GM2, and they are the designers on the job. There is also a 2-week comment period that ends July 14th, and my email address and mailing address and our office telephone number is on screen. If you have any questions, please feel free to use any of those resources and give us a call. Our normal office hours are 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. We are closed tomorrow we're closed Friday for the Juneteenth holiday, and we're closed Monday for observance of the July 4th Independence Day. So because Juneteenth was published at 5 o'clock the day before, we were not able to honor it on the according date. We're honoring starring it tomorrow. I'm sorry, Friday. With that, Rich, I understand you have a couple, you should be started with the next couple slides.
Okay. So good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. As Mark said, we're here to receive your comments and get your input on this project tonight, which is the Hamden's Walkable Sidewalks project. Mark mentioned my name. I'm Rich Armstrong. I'm the project manager for GM2 Associates. Joining me from GM2 are a few of our other project team members, Mr. Mike Marzi, Paul Brand, and Jonathan Curie. Here's our meeting agenda. We're going to touch upon the location, background, and purpose of the project, a description of work on each of the 4 streets. We have some information on the rights-of-way process, the cost estimate and funding, the project schedule, and then we'll open it up to public comment and questions. So this particular project involves 4 streets in the town of Hamden: Benham Street, Treadwell Street, Auger Street, and Davis Street. A little bit of background on the project. The scope of work of on each of the 4 streets stems from 2 previous studies that the town undertook several years ago. In fact, many streets were involved and studied as part of these 2 studies, including the 4 streets subject of tonight's meeting. And several projects have been initiated, including this one, as a result of the outcome of those 2 studies. And there's a fair amount of public engagement, which means we think we've got some good, sound project goals to achieve. And those project goals include pedestrian safety, improving pedestrian safety by constructing new sidewalks where none exist today in priority locations. We also hope to improve facilities for bicyclists and some strategies for traffic calming. So of the 4 streets, let's talk about Auger Street first. And in this graphic, this is obviously an aerial view. Auger Street is primarily a one-way street. The full stretch is from Whitney Avenue to Newhall Street in the east-west direction. And it's one-way westbound from Frederick Street to Newhall. And on this particular street, there are some missing sidewalks. And if you can, I don't know if you can see my cursor, hopefully you can. In the lower left-hand corner of the image, you can see these white stripes indicating where we would be constructing new sidewalks, new 5-foot wide concrete sidewalks in the vicinity of Farnsworth Street, Rolfe Street, and Giles Street. Now, one of the other elements of work on Auger Street is some traffic calming. And in this particular case, we're interested in creating what we call a chicane effect. And I'm toggling back and forth to show how we would like to restripe some of the on-street parking. The on-street parking today on Auger Street is on the south side of the street. And we're proposing to restripe 3 areas on the north side to create what we call a chicane effect. I just admitted somebody else into the room, into the meeting. This graphic shows that effect. So by shifting some of the parking to the north side and leaving some of the parking striped on the south side, we create some horizontal shifts in the path of motor vehicles as they traverse east to west down Auger Street. And this horizontal shift ought to help encourage slower speed. So that's the traffic calming strategy on Auger Street. Treadwell Street. Treadwell Street, the full stretch is from Whitney to Dixwell Avenue. On the western portion of Treadwell, from the vicinity of Martin Terrace to Marne Street, there are no sidewalks today. And so the project proposes to construct new sidewalk on the north side in that particular stretch. And that would provide a continuous stretch of sidewalk from Dixwell to Whitney. In the rest of the project area, we're proposing what we call sharrows. These are pavement markings on the roadway, on the pavement in each direction, and they're indicated by these symbols. It's a bicycle with 2 arrows. and they're called sharrows, commonly called sharrows, to indicate a shared lane environment, and I'll show you that in a minute. I want to point out this little orange area here, just to the west of Leader Hill Drive. And this is an area where there's not enough room for a new sidewalk within the existing pavement area. And we're proposing a new pedestrian bridge to carry the pedestrians over Lake Whitney. So let me show you, let me go to that right now. So here in this photograph on the left, you can see existing Treadwell Street. We're looking easterly. And this is a very small structure that currently carries Treadwell Street over Lake Whitney. And you can see there's not enough room for a new sidewalk. In fact, this is the narrowest location on Treadwell Street. It's about 26 feet wide. So we're proposing a new pedestrian bridge be built on the north side of this existing bridge parapet wall. These engineering drawings, they're preliminary. They're but one concept for this proposed pedestrian bridge, which would be about 54 feet long, with a clear width of 6 feet, and it can be timber, it can be steel. That's a decision yet to be made, and with a different potential appearance. Let me go back and show you those sharrows. And so again, if you haven't seen those, I believe you have these on Putnam Avenue in town. They're common in New Haven and other municipalities, where you put these pavement markings on the pavement, and it's to indicate to drivers that it's a shared lane environment, to expect bicyclists. And it's a pathway, kind of indicates the pathway for bicyclists. They're typically painted about 4 feet off the edge of curb, off the edge of road. And that, you can see that in this graphic here on the left. So those are called sharrows, or formerly called shared lane markings. And we talked about the new proposed pedestrian bridge. Onto Davis Street. The project area is from Ridge Road on the east to Hartford Turnpike on the west. And in that stretch, again, there are no sidewalks that exist today. So the project proposes new sidewalk entirely on the north side between Ridge Road and Hartford Turnpike. It looks like we're going to have to construct a retaining wall on the north side, and in a particular area to support that new sidewalk opposite Rogers Road. And similar to Treadwell Street, we're proposing sharrows in both directions, pavement markings on the pavement. For traffic calming purposes, we're proposing to install a what we call a radar speed awareness sign. You've seen these where they detect your speed and give you that feedback, encouraging those who may be traveling faster than the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit to slow down. I believe there had been one there previously, and this would either be in the eastbound or westbound or potentially both direction. I think it's probably more critical in the eastbound direction as you drive eastbound and approach Farnham Drive, the entrance to East Rock Park. That entrance is at a crest vertical curve, so it's really kind of the top of a little hill, which is a good location for, and what we're proposing is a new pedestrian crosswalk right at the drive to East Rock Park. And again, the speed awareness sign would help encourage people to slow down, to be aware. We did investigate the most 5 years of crash data. We did not see any crashes there, but I think there is some history and concern of safety at that driveway. So certainly with new pedestrian activity, a crosswalk makes a lot of sense. We'd be proposing at the sidewalk location what we call rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RRFBs. You may have seen these in other municipalities. You may in fact have them in Hamden, but they're fairly new. The past several years, they're being installed at what we call mid-block crosswalks, where a crosswalk doesn't have the benefit of a traffic signal. And the law requires that drivers yield to pedestrians in the sidewalk. These flashing lights are activated by the pedestrian, so they're not flashing all the time. And they've been found to be very successful in increasing compliance with the yield to pedestrian laws. So we propose that to be, those to be installed at that crosswalk location. Benham Street. Benham Street, this is a graphic showing existing sidewalk locations, and you can see it's very discontinuous. We're focusing on new sidewalks here shown in yellow in that important stretch between Mix Avenue and Circular Avenue. We did an investigation and a study and had a public forum, a month and a half ago. And the town recommends the new sidewalk on the south side in that stretch. And then there's another very small section near Dunbar Hill School on the north side, opposite Lane Street. There's an existing crosswalk. It appears to serve that athletic field. So we're proposing a little new stretch of sidewalk to receive that pedestrians at that crossing. Now on Benham Street, we have a different existing condition where there's enough existing roadway width for the most part, but not entirely, but for the most part in long stretches. We have enough pavement width to stripe exclusive 5-foot wide bike lanes, one for each direction. And you can see that graphically in this view here. Today, Benham Street does not have striped shoulders, just a double yellow line. So we would stripe the 5-foot wide bike lane, and it would leave 11-foot travel lanes, 11-foot eastbound and westbound travel lanes, which conforms to standards for the type of roadway. We think that would have some traffic calming effect. The appearance of a narrowed roadway with that white stripe and the bike lane, exclusive bike lanes. And as I mentioned, in that stretch, that new stretch of 5-foot wide sidewalk. Here's a graphic similar to the others in white, again, showing that new proposed sidewalk between Mix Avenue and the intersection of Denzil Hill and Circular Avenue. And then that small stretch opposite Lane Street. And these 5-foot wide bike lanes, one in each direction. We can fit in the bike lanes for the most part between Dunbar Hill Road and Mix Avenue. We're going to have to do a little bit of widening right around Cherry Hill Road. Just not quite wide enough. There's a little pinch point. So we're going to widen the roadway a little bit to have those 5-foot wide bike lanes be continuous. Now, when we get to Mix Avenue, the stretch between Mix Avenue and Dixwell Avenue, there is not enough roadway width. And so we're proposing, rather than the exclusive bike lanes, we would have these sharrows again on the pavement markings. So it would provide, improved bicycle facilities, the full stretch between Dixwell Avenue and Dunbar Hill Road. Similar to Davis Street, we're proposing these radar speed awareness signs, one for each direction. We're suggesting they go at the approaches to Dunbar Hill School, a very sensitive area for pedestrian safety, the school children. So that's what we're also suggesting for some traffic calming. So I've covered the 4 streets and a little bit about property rights. The vast majority of the work will be able to be accomplished within the town-owned rights of way. We do have several locations where it appears that while the sidewalk work will be on town rights of way, because of the topography in certain areas, we think we're going to have to, the town will have to acquire some what we call slope easements. Primarily, these are easements where we're going to have to change the topography to fit in the sidewalk. So it's not an acquisition of a fee taking of property, but an easement. And anyone who is interested in their particular property, I have highlighted which properties are on some colored plans, and I believe they've also been posted on the town website. And I can go over that in a minute, but I need to read you this information because the process of acquiring property under a federal aid project, which this is, needs to conform to what they call the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policies Act. It goes all the way back to 1970. So that's the federal law, often just referred to as the Uniform Act. The Connecticut Department of Transportation, CTDOT, will be providing oversight of the town's rights-of-way process. And that's because the funding, the federal funding, is being administered by Connecticut DOT to the town of Hamden. All property owners are entitled to a written offer of just compensation based on the fair market value of the rights needed for the project. And again, we're anticipating slope easements. Property owners are given an opportunity to consider the offer and to negotiate the final price. And if agreement can't be reached, the town may acquire the rights it needs by eminent domain, although more often than not, a price is agreed upon and it's settled that way. So that's the procedure. And we also have with us on this meeting tonight, in this call tonight, Mike Marzi of GM2, who was very, very knowledgeable and helpful with regards to rights-of-way processes. So if you have any questions, either in this meeting or subsequent to the meeting, we'll be happy to help answer any questions and help the town with that effort. The construction cost estimate right now is around $2.8 million. We're at the preliminary stage, so we're about 30% done in design. So there's still some amount of uncertainties, but we certainly feel we know a lot about the scope and the extent of the work on these 4 streets. The funding, as I mentioned, is through CTDOT. It provides the Federal Highway Administration's 80% of the project will be funded through Federal Highway Administration out of their Transportation Alternatives program. That particular program helps fund projects just like this, bicycle and pedestrian improvement projects commonly. And the town picks up the balance, the 20% balance. The schedule I mentioned, we're at the end of preliminary design. We're paused right now. After decisions are made coming out of this public involvement process, we'll be entering final design activities, including completing the engineering drawings, the plans, specifications, and estimates for bidding purposes. And that would run almost another year. We would finish up in May of next year, and the town would be advertising for construction bids in June of 2022. And we see construction lasting about a year. Now the schedule all depends on, we have some critical items on the schedule, and that is those property rights, those easements, and environmental permits, primarily associated with the new pedestrian bridge on Treadwell Street that I mentioned. So that's the end of the presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to Mark, who's going to, he and I will facilitate the question and answer. And Mark, I wonder if I want to stop sharing my screen and maybe turn it over to you, or do I want to keep it because I have some additional information I can share in my screen. So why don't I keep this for now? Again, to remind you, there is a 2-week comment period post this meeting that ends July 14th. So if you have any comments or questions that you would like to offer subsequent to this meeting, Mark would prefer you contact him by email, but again, you can write to him or contact him by phone. And I'm looking for the chat box.
I've got it open. I've been answering a few of the questions.
Oh, okay.
We will get to that also. Just to, at this point, let's keep this up so people can write down the information as they need.
Yes.
And if you can flip the project up, or you can flip up an individual intersection should they have any questions, we can bring up that plan. We did receive, just for the record, 3 emails of comments. The first one I received from June 23rd, and I believe the commenter is here. So if they wish to, and I don't know if it's Johannes Bachman or Johannes, but it's Dear Town Engineer. Thank you for your notification dated June 16th, 2021. However, the internet link you provided us and the information for further information does not work. I did correspond with them. They were able to see it eventually. We are very supportive of sidewalk improvements on our Davis Street, but would like to get the appropriate information upfront as required. Please advise me how to get information. Our whole neighborhood is awaiting what the town is planning in this regard. To answer that question, if you go to hamden.com to the engineering tab and then go under projects, it's 61-153. And that is where all this information, the plans, the colored plans that you see up on the screen right now, this presentation will be posted, this recording will be posted. So we'll be able to add additional information. There's some preliminary maps. There's some maps from the initial conversation that we had with some of the neighbors around Sacred Heart. We will get to Dwayne's comments in a little bit. So that's where the information will be. Okay, I apologize. I don't know if I got your name correct.
It's Johannes. And
Thank you very much.
The issue was that in the letter that you mailed by snail mail, the website was not correctly characterized between the numbers. It was slashes, not dashes.
Okay, thank you. But I did correspond with you via email. You were able to get in, luckily.
Yes, thank you.
I greatly appreciate the update. And would you like to add anything to your current comment?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time. Second one is Mike Mendelson. I am writing to express my support for sidewalks on Davis Street as currently presented. I think that sidewalks and a crosswalk to East Rock Park are sorely needed. That's what Mr. Mendelson gave. And we just this afternoon, I received another letter. Mr. Austin, I am writing regards the proposed sidewalks on Benham Street. We strongly oppose said walkway on our property. We work hard to maintain our property and do not want to lose our fence and our plantings. It is very unfair after over 25 years, we now risk losing the fence and gardens we invested in to accommodate imaginary walkers. The biggest foot traffic we see is the Sacred Heart students running on their side of the street. Due to high unsafe traffic, children do not generally walk to school in this area. Sidewalk or no sidewalk, with the speed at which people drive, it is very unsafe. Secondly, you are putting an additional burden on taxpayers to clear ice and snow at the risk of being fined. Hamden does not do a good job of maintaining the existing sidewalks, so let's not add to the unmaintained sidewalks in this town. This $3 million would be better spent on crime reduction and enforcing traffic laws. I am sure you don't care about what long-standing taxpayers want, but we do not want this on our property. Our taxes go up and we get things forced on us we don't want, and the things we need are ignored. Also, our gas line to our home is where the sidewalk would go. Please place the sidewalks on the Sacred Heart side and leave the residents alone. I have reviewed the plans, and the small obstacles, in quotations, like our fence and garden, are not small to us. Lori and Dwayne Smith of Benham Street. Thank you very much. Smiths, we greatly appreciate your time for putting that information together. And I'm sorry, for that, if there are fences or plantings, we can replace a fence. When it comes to the individual plantings, we may ask that the individual homeowners for assistance to move them so that we, the contractor's not going to take as much care as a resident would in moving their plantings, but we can certainly replace a fence if we do need to relocate one. To address their concern about the $3 million, we either spend it on this project or we give it back. This is not town money. This is actually grant money, and it is very dedicated, so I cannot repurpose it. So it either goes to this project or we return it. There is no middle ground where we can use it somewhere else. This is very indicative of most grants that we obtain. I don't know if this family happens to be here tonight. If they are and would like to speak up, we'll give them an opportunity. Most people are muted, so if you are here, please feel free to unmute yourself and provide any additional input.
Yes, I'm here.
What would you like to add, please?
I just don't feel that it's very fair to the taxpayers to disrupt our lives when there's a perfectly nice piece of land across the street with nothing but grass all the way. Why not, instead of destroying people's properties, put it on the opposite side where Sacred Heart is? They use that grass all the time to run. Why don't you put it on that side and leave the damn taxpayers alone? Why disrupt my fence and make me try to plant some? I have a beautiful, beautiful ornamental grass out there that is huge. I cannot move it. It will kill it. And you're not going to be able to replace that. And we've worked so long and so hard at trying to maintain our property. And you're just saying, well, we'll just replace the fence. Well, that's not the point. We don't want our fence replaced. We want it left alone. Especially when on the opposite side of the road, there's no telephone poles, there's no property that would be destroyed. And it seems like that would be the logical place to put the sidewalk, is on the opposite side of the road. Why does it have to go on the residence side?
We did hold a previous public meeting. Unfortunately, I did not hear from you during that pre-input session, and Sacred Heart came out against it.
Oh, so they matter. Oh, excuse me, but Sacred Heart, I don't believe pays taxes, because that's like a church. So they don't even pay taxes in the town. So why do they have more say over the residents?
They were the only ones who came to the meeting.
Well, I'm so sorry. There was a pandemic. I wasn't going to go out in the middle of a pandemic to a meeting.
I apologize. We did try to advertise. It was a virtual.
And I did write, and I did fill out survey. I did fill out the survey saying the same exact thing. And so now the burden is going to be on us because Sacred Heart, who doesn't pay taxes, doesn't want it. Well, that's just lovely.
We can look at it. We are at preliminary design. And Rich, do you have any other reasons why it would be better on this side versus the other?
Yeah, there was one important consideration, and there were a number of considerations, but one very important one was the study we did with regards to where the greatest need appeared to be with regards to what side of the road the sidewalk would go. So we did this. I don't know if hopefully you can see this graphic. Let me pull it up. So this graphic here, the red band, this of course is the south side of Benham Street, and then the red band on the north side of Benham Street. And this zone here, this large geographic area, is the walking zone, the 1 mile walking zone for students at Dunbar Hill School, right? That's a very, I think it's an elementary school, young students, and they can't take a bus, right? They're either going to be driven by a parent or they're walking. So the desire, or the demand, if you will, is indicated by the band width, that red band, and there's simply more residences, households on the south side. You can see it's less populated on the north side, and these bands are proportional to what one would expect, the volume, if you will, the number of pedestrians on which side of the street. And you can see there's a greater demand on the south side. Now, having said that, that was but one consideration. But I think it's an important one, because school children, whether they're driven now or whether they're choosing to walk or whether they will choose to walk when sidewalks are constructed, we believe the greater demand is on the south side. So that was a strong consideration.
But excuse me, but
Yeah.
there are bus services to Dunbar Hill from this location. I know because I live here and I watch the buses pick up the kids. They don't walk from Vantage Road to Dunbar Hill. They take a bus. Or their parents drive them if that's what they choose. There are no walkers. They're not required to walk here.
Okay.
So that doesn't even make any sense in this area. If
So-
you want to make it on the south side further
Right.
down where they do walk,
Right.
I can understand that. But from up here, they don't have to walk. They have a bus service and they also have their parents that could take them.
Is it fair to say one of the reasons they're not walking today is because of the lack of sidewalk in that stretch
No,
from Vantage
no.
to Dunbar Hill?
No, first of all, it's too far to send little kids. I mean, these are kindergarten to sixth graders.
Yeah.
Who in their right mind in this day and age with the crime going on is gonna put their kids out on the sidewalk at Vantage Road and let them walk all the way to Dunbar Hill? That doesn't happen. That's why there's bus service here. My
Okay.
kids got on the bus every day.
Yep.
On Vantage Road to go to Dunbar Hill. That's not even an issue. So whoever did that survey didn't take into consideration that they have bus service here, so that it's not needed from here to Dunbar Hill, because nobody walks to Dunbar Hill from here.
Okay, so and I think, but in general, you can see there's a greater density of households on the south side. And it was
Yeah, that you're gonna screw up all of our properties. That's great.
Well, I think in fairness to objectively looking at this, and again, it's our opinion, it was the opinion at the time of putting this together, that there appears to would be a greater use, a greater demand on the south side. And you obviously disagree with that, and we respect that.
I do, because I live here and I'm home. I'm a stay-at-home mom and I stay here every day. And I don't see people walking on this side. I see the people walking on the opposite side of the road more than on this side, because there's a big grassy area on the other side. And there's not many people walking anyway. The most people I see is the Sacred Heart kids across the street. That's the ones you see. I don't ever see bikes going by. So the bike lane, I can't understand at all, because you'd be crazy to ride a bike on this street with the way people drive. We've been hit, our house personally has been hit twice by cars, twice by a car. So
yeah,
I don't know what the purpose of this is, just to spend the money to say we did it and just to disrupt people that have been living here for 28 years.
well, again, I don't want to speak for the town, but those studies and the public involvement back in 2011 and 2013, it was
10
involved.
years ago. 10 years ago
yeah,
was a different town. 10 years ago, there wasn't the crime and there wasn't the problems with traffic back then. I know, I've been here for 28 years. Maybe they need to do a new study to see what's happening in 2021 and not rely on 2011.
Okay, Mark, I have nothing more to add.
That's a very valid concern you have.
Yep.
And we have all been very cognizant of the additional crime that has happened. We've actually been using these studies, and we have been trying to chase various grants to try to address safety features. Traffic on Benham is very high. You are completely correct. That's the purpose why the recommendation previously was to put in sidewalks to this area and to do some additional traffic calming. So really, we're trying to address, now that we've managed to find some grant funds, to be able to address those studies, as we've been trying to address them on Putnam. I have additional earmarks for Hartford Turnpike, for Ridge Road, for where we have another sidewalk in between Circular and Lane. So we're actually further down into the neighborhood with yet another sidewalk and calming project. So we are trying, the whole purpose behind here is to try to continue to address some of these concerns. Is it perfect? No, absolutely not. But that's why we're here to try to.
What if all of us, what if I went to my neighbors? I don't even know if half of them even pay attention to this, but what if everybody on this side of the street said we don't want it in our front yard? Then what would happen? Would the town listen to us then, or do we just get overrun because we need to spend this money on this sidewalk, and Sacred Heart obviously has more say than the taxpayers?
To be very respectful to Sacred Heart, they were the only one from Bennett Street to.
Okay, but I'm saying if I contact my neighbors that we're all affected on this, and I contact them and make them aware, and we all contact you and say we don't want it on our side of the street either, would it matter at this point, or is it a done deal? That's what I'm asking.
This is 30% preliminary design. So we are in a place where we would be able to shift gears. This is not permitting, which would be 60% or further design. So yes, this would be a time where there is quite a bit of influence as public you have. And that's the purpose why we have it at this point. And it was the reason why we held the previous public input meeting solely on Benham. But I realize the pandemic is not a good situation. We tried to make it virtual. That doesn't work for everybody, and we do apologize. If we missed something,
No, there's a lot of elderly people up the street from me that I know that I'm pretty sure they're not using a Zoom meeting to speak their mind either. So, I mean,
we still are here. There's a 2-week period. We're mandated by our funding source to put this together. This is absolutely why we have this at this point. So yes, if you feel completely aggrieved and your neighbors do agree, this is the time we can address this. So thank you. We greatly appreciate your time and your opinion. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
very upsetting. Very upsetting.
I-
Hi, this is Josh Charco and Melissa Kaplan at 186 Davis. I did attend the last meeting and discussed Davis Street, in particular, the side of the road that the sidewalk was being proposed on. Right now, you're proposing it to be on the north side, which would impact 12 homes. And if it went on the north side, it would impact 4 homes. The size of the lots on the south side are twice the size of the lots on the north side. It seems to me the logical choice would be to put crosswalks at Ridge Road and Hartford Turnpike with the intersection with Davis, and you put walk, do not walk signs to cross to the south side, the park side, and people would walk on the park side. Because most of the traffic that goes up and down Davis Street is going into the park. So to put a light, which would end up, by the way, directly in front of my house, on Davis Street with a flashing light for someone to cross versus a red light at an intersection that then gives a walk sign for someone to walk across does not seem like that makes sense to me. The rapid flashing beacons seem fine for an area where you can't cross at a light, but you have those options at Hartford Turnpike and Ridge Road. Last meeting, we talked about one of the holdups was putting in some paperwork to be able to build sidewalks in a park. It seems like we've had plenty of time to put in that paperwork. It sounds like we still have time to put in that paperwork. And I am proposing that it is certainly not equitable to put in a sidewalk across 12 homes with half the lot size versus 4 homes with literally twice the lot size. It's 8 of those 12 that you're impacting are a quarter acre or less. And that doesn't seem very equitable. We also talked about, I believe, that Richard had said that off the top of his head, and I wouldn't hold him to it, that the cost between the north and the south side was also about the same. I will tell you that I've lived here now for 15 years. Traffic is, people drive extremely fast on Davis Street. You are at a hill both directions to cross into the park. We literally do it almost every day during COVID to go for a walk in the morning. Did it this morning. It's a great location to live, but to have to cross directly where cars are coming up hills and can't see you is very, very dangerous. I would propose that the sidewalks go on the south side, impacting 1/3 as many houses, and would ultimately be safer where people would cross at cross sections where the lights turn red and have a walk or don't walk sign. I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from various Hamden initiatives. I'm also a member of the Hamden Board of Ed, and one of our main goals that we have been stressing in the last few years is equity. And I really feel that the decisions that are going into this project, and the woman spoke extremely eloquently right before us about really thinking mindfully about your taxpayers and also further disenfranchising people rather than a park or people with larger homes and larger acreage. So you're impacting 12 people on Davis compared to 4 people. Those 12 homes. Those 12 homes are also substantially smaller and also smaller lot sizes. So you are significantly devaluing homes from people of lesser economic means, and also then privileging those precious 4 homes with economic means. In no way is this plan mindful of people in terms of growing disparities between the wealth gap that already exists in Hamden. Please be mindful in terms of thinking about equity and also trying to be as disruptive to as least homes as possible. There is a park across the street. Wouldn't it make more sense if the sidewalk was on the same side as the park? That is where people are going. You have natural places where you can cross at the intersections where people cross anyway. I'm also a runner and a cyclist, and I go all the time running on Waite Street, and there is a crosswalk on Waite Street. And yet I've also been almost hit by a car almost twice because of the same reason that it is right above the hill, right near the soccer fields. It is extremely dangerous, just like Davis Street. And I tell you, even with the crosswalk, and even if you had a bright, shiny sign, drivers don't necessarily stop. If they are stopped at a stop sign, they have to stop. So when you're thinking about safety, thinking about in terms of the types of cars that drive on Davis, it is a major throughway, as you know, from State Street to Whitney Avenue. And my children take the bus, and we are very mindful also of where they get dropped off to make sure that they're on the side of our house when they're dropped off from the school bus, because they cannot cross the road, because even when our bus signs have the stop sign, people go through it all the time. It is extremely dangerous. Please, please don't endanger the public, and please, please don't further disenfranchise people who do not have the economic means. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Feinberg, I believe I saw you next with your hand up. If somebody would like to flag me in the chat, or if you turn on your camera and just put your hand up, I will acknowledge you via the chat and put you on a list for in order. Ms. Feinberg, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much.
I'm having an echo. I'm on two different yeah, I'm glad to be here tonight. And can you hear me okay?
I'm sorry, Ms. Feinberg, your feed is unfortunately garbling up a little bit. It's a little hard to hear from you.
Can you hear me now?
That is a little better, thank you.
Okay. Okay. I'm really glad to be here, and I really appreciate the meeting. And I wanted to say that I'm a new homeowner on the corner of Davis and Hartford Turnpike. I'm on the north side of the street, and I'm glad to be meeting my neighbors here tonight. So I'm in the property that's marked Newman. The map was made before I arrived. And, you know, and in addition to the really important issues that were raised about safety getting to the park and equity, I wanted to raise some neighborhood concerns. And one is about the traffic noise, and another is about the feel of the neighborhood. And both of these things, I think, depend partly on the shrubbery and the trees that people have thoughtfully put into place to help manage the noise and to help keep the neighborhood beautiful. And I noticed that the plan involves removing 6 shrubs right next to my property and 2 trees, and that it continues along the street removing greenery. And you know, I think that would be too bad for this neighborhood that provides a sort of archway to the park visually. Also, I think I, like my neighbors, have noticed the trucks hurtling through and the other kinds of fast moving bikes and things hurtling through at all hours, especially in the middle of the night. And they're loud. And so for people whose fences will be affected, but also for those of us who are sort of hoping that the greenery absorbs some of this sound, I'm not hearing that this plan is helping with traffic calming in our area very much. And I'm not fully understanding why trucks are hurtling through, but 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, I'm routinely awoken by trucks sort of hurtling along the uneven road and sort of making a lot of noise. And so, and it's true on Davis, it's also true on Hartford Turnpike, but it seems to come a lot from Davis Street. So I wanted to add that additional concern, and I wanted to ask if there are thoughts about how to regreen in replacement of the trees and shrubs that would be removed, and how to quiet. And then the last question I have is about littering. And I wonder about town efforts to help as you sort of remove the sense that this is someone's property. We're already having an enormous littering problem. I pick up entire breakfasts, 4 or 5 of them a day in front of my house. And I imagine my neighbors are doing the same thing. And I would be picking up more if I didn't have some walking neighbors who were kind enough to pick up for me on a daily basis. And so, so those were my questions really about the noise and about the greenery and about the littering, in addition to the sort of feel coming into this section of Davis as an entrance to the park. Thanks.
Okay. For the noise and the greenery, that is something we can work with you. We do, and at least in any other place that I've worked, if we do take down vegetation, we're willing to work with you to put some back. So if you had some ideas of what you would like to have put back, probably a combination of evergreen and some deciduous. The deciduous would be the large tall trees. The evergreen would be some lower ones that would help you with privacy and noise. So we can certainly work with any vegetation we do take down. We would definitely work with the homeowners to try to restore. That's very, very common. We do try to do that. And in any of the places I've worked. So we definitely would consider that. When it comes to littering, unfortunately, I don't have a good answer. I would say I just don't have a good answer for people who throw stuff. And the other thing is we're right in a watershed. So our drinking water is coming from next door for all practical purposes. Littering is a big problem. It's becoming bigger and bigger. I do monitor the C-Click fix continuously. I don't have a good answer for that. I would hope that with, additional, the sidewalk sometimes deters people because they realize it's someone's front yard when there's a large greenway, and I live way off the road. So I have litter in my own front yard for that exact reason, because I do have a row of bushes for privacy also. So I would hope with the sidewalk, it would make people realize that there's actually a property there and not to litter. I don't have a good answer. I honestly will say I do not have a good answer. Traffic, we do hear very loud and clear. The traffic authority is looking at this street. We are looking at truck traffic. It is not an easy answer. It is not a quick answer. It is the only east-west corridor we have in town. This is not a good answer. We don't have a great suggestion yet. We're working on it. That's the best I can do at this time. I know the traffic authority is looking at it. We did look at, and it even went to council, and council sent it back because this is the only east-west corridor. There is nothing to the south until New Haven. There is nothing to the north other than purely residential roads until you get to Hartford Turnpike. They have cut Skip Street off, and all the others are a little more circuitous. I don't have a good answer. We are looking at it. There is a study out there commissioned right now. I hope those answers your questions. I understand you may not find them completely satisfying. And I do understand. Keep in mind, Route 8's my back line. So I hear motorcycles, I hear trucks, and there is never going to be anything I can do about it.
Could you just directly address the question of which side of the road was selected and why on the Davis Street area?
For all of them, the predominant reason was both the study itself. The studies put it on Benham Street, put it on the south side, because that's where the majority of the users meaning the collected area. Thank you, Mr. Bender. I see you. I have you after someone else. then we will, and then also on Davis, it was also projected on the north side because that's where everyone would be coming from. Not everybody, I'm sorry. That's far too strong of a suggestion. The majority of the people would come. Also, it is incredibly difficult paperwork wise, right-of-way wise, to put a sidewalk into an existing park. I've already been warned on Treadwell because we're looking at potentially even future work on Treadwell because the south side of Treadwell between Treadwell and Putnam is being considered for a park. We have been advised to get the easements now because once it becomes a park, it is incredibly difficult to get any right-of-way established. Again, not a great answer, but we're looking at where the people are collecting from. And that's usually one of the bigger factors. I hope that helps answer your question. I had Miss White, Susan White next, and then I have Joseph Zanoni. I'm sorry.
Perfect.
I do. That's rare. Thank you. Miss White, you're next.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I don't know that I can actually share. So I left my comments in the chat. I'm on a flight. But I just wanted to extend my agreement with the person who said that flashing light for the crosswalk is probably not going to be safe enough. And I would advocate for an actual stop sign for pedestrians to cross if this is a done deal and we can't move the sidewalk to the park side, which I agree with the people who've said that the sidewalk should be on the park side, because then the sidewalk would connect with, well, never mind. But the other issue I wanted to bring up was the intersection at Ridge Road and Davis, where it's sort of an inefficient light. There's a lot of waiting that goes on that doesn't need to go on. Cars coming from Hartford Turnpike south can actually turn right if there's a right turn arrow added to that intersection. Also, I wonder if crosswalks can be added with lights because there are lots of pedestrians using that intersection. So it would be extremely helpful, I think, to connect our neighborhood with Whitneyville. Thank you.
Mark, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I realized out of respect, I ended up muting myself. Just to reiterate what I said, Joseph, I have you next, and after you, I have Ruth Coffey. And to address the concern that did come up, everything that is in the chat is being saved. Also, this meeting is being recorded. So we will have all the comments that are in the chat also. So thank you very much for the multiple ways that you're giving us feedback. And if I missed somebody putting their hand up or something, I apologize. That's where I saw Ms. Coffey's name. So thank you. Joseph, you have the floor. Thank you.
So there's been a certain talk about the park. The most important thing I think to start figuring in this is that it's a New Haven park. It's owned entirely by New Haven. So this would be a massive setback to any planning. I live in one of the 4 houses that have been mentioned. And in a previous argument, the argument was, well, the church pays no taxes, so they should bear the burden. Well, I pay a lot of taxes. Okay, so that's my privilege. I grew up poor, I worked hard, and I own that house. So next, right to the north of me, right to the east of me, there is a swale created by the town of New Haven, and it runs directly.
Sir, I believe you've frozen a little bit. To help him, I did hear from him earlier, and it looks like you're coming back. There's a swale that comes down from the park, and that does drain part of the park and comes next to his property towards Davis.
So the first thing you need to do if you're going to do a plan like this is you need to remediate that to the current standards. And good luck with getting New Haven to do their proper part of doing that, because they built all those parking lots up in there on East Rock. It all drains. They actually changed the drainage, if you can imagine this, toward the reservoir instead of going toward the Quinnipiac. But that's the kind of thing. And if you want to squabble and fight with New Haven, you know, we could put this project back 5 years in the first place. So let me just say that. So there are a lot of impediments. The engineers have looked at this. They have tried to balance, I think, the difficulties, equities, and costs. And there are a lot of difficulties wherever these sidewalks are routed. But to run it on the south side is going to be extremely difficult. So if people don't want this project, you can start trying to run it on the south side. That's all I have to say. I have a lot more to say, but I'm just gonna, in the interest of others, I'll be silent here.
Thank you, sir. Next, I have Ruth Coffey. We have you next, please.
Hello, I don't know if you can see me. With the shared screen, I can't see myself, so fingers crossed. We're very new here. We moved in last June, so we've only lived here since there's been a pandemic, and it's made it rather difficult to get to know everybody. So we are starting to get up to speed with what's going on. I should say we have moved into the property that was the Ortmans. So we're at 129 Davis Street. So we're one of those 4 properties on the south side of Davis Street. We moved here from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and we've got 2 very young children. And we love living here. We're very glad to be part of the neighborhood now. We have been very concerned about the traffic on the road, though, and the lack of safe opportunity to get us and our kids over to just even walking over to Hamden itself to go for ice cream feels like a really hazardous journey with a 3-year-old. I haven't spoken to any of the neighbors. I would be perfectly happy to have a sidewalk on my side because it would be a lot safer for my kids, and I will be able to get them to the park without a really quite scary walk up the hill, which we avoid. I would echo what's been said very much about traffic and traffic calming, and trying to, if there are going to be people crossing, then and more people crossing more, and we see a lot of people running up and down the road, then the speed of the trucks and lorries and things that come past is very worrying. And we would be very glad of a proper crossing at the turnpike so that we can actually get either side of the house. It feels as though, unless we're coming out in the car, and even that is quite a nasty junction sometimes, it's not very safe to get the children out and about. So that's probably what I've got to add. I don't know enough about the plans, and I'm just sort of getting up to speed as to all the details of what's on what side. But in terms of concerns about traffic speed and the vegetation and the littering, those are all things we experience very much too. We'll try listening and learning to what's going on. But for those of you I haven't met, we're glad to be joining you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Someone also put in the chat not terribly long ago about putting in speed humps. We probably, just the sheer volume of traffic that comes through, speed humps would increase your noise very significantly and would not deter as much in the way of traffic. When you get to that volume of traffic that does come through here, and I don't have that chart in front of me to quote some of the volumes that come across there, that's available through the Connecticut DOT. It is able to be looked up, and that's the resource we'd be going to.
Mark, this is Rich. It's about 10,000 vehicles per day.
And I think that's higher than federal standards suggest for traffic humps. That would be much too high. And plus, traffic humps, especially with larger vehicles, do get very noisy. As we've had some of your neighbors complain about the noise. Ms. Feinberg, we do hear you about the noise. That is actually something your other neighbors have expressed very vehemently to us. And even the occasional pothole does create a great deal of noise. We are very respectful of that.
Who is responsible for the maintenance of Davis Street?
The street itself is the town of Hamden. So if there's potholes, you can put that into C-Click Fix. We do look to pave that.
Just
we're the town. It's the town.
Potholes are more than 50% of the problem in terms of noise.
Agreed. I have a little 50-pound fur ball next to me who keeps quiet retreats. So, yes, you're correct. Potholes are a big problem out there. Our crews are out there occasionally. We do need to probably repave. That's a complete different discussion.
As one of the most traveled roads in Hamden, should it not get priority in terms of being repaved?
Correct. I would not disagree with that. It also, the Legislative Council did not appropriate any money last year in the capital program. So with no money, no paving happened last year. Not a good answer, but if we don't have the money, we can't pave.
I would just recommend that, there needs to be something done in terms of traffic slowing. My property happens to be just very close to the curve, and it, I'm being honked at almost every time I come out of my driveway, just because the other parties driving on the road are going too fast.
We do not disagree with you. And that is something that is being taken up with the Traffic Commission now. The Legislative Council sent the restriction back because they're concerned about this being our only east-west corridor for this side of town. And just banning trucks, they're concerned about. They have tabled this until November. So the Traffic Commission has till November to reconsider and provide something else. I will reach back out to the chief and we will have another discussion. And the same discussion would happen on Benham because it is another high volume street. So yes, you're correct. You're very correct on volumes.
Thank you for that.
Is there anyone else who would like to describe the obligations that homeowners would incur for snow removal if these sidewalks were added? Thank you. Ms. Ward, I see you next. Thank you. The homeowners would be responsible for removing snow from the sidewalks. That is our ordinance. So if someone has, sidewalks, they would be responsible for removing the snow. If something broke up years from now, that comes back onto the town itself. So we would be removing those ourselves or fixing them. So I hope that helps a little bit. We also ask that anyone who has sidewalks to also try to keep bushes off them. I do have a couple frequent flyers I'm regularly commenting to say, please remove the bushes from your sidewalk. So it does happen too. Ms. Ward, I believe I had you next.
A very quick question. I apologize if you covered this. I had to tune in a little bit late. I'm concerned about the intersection of Hartford Turnpike and Davis. If you're walking from Whitney over the bridge, it's really terrifying to try to turn right because there's no sidewalk in that last stretch on the south side of Davis. And if you're on the other side, then you have to cross and their cars, there's not a real pedestrian crosswalk. So do you already plan to have some pedestrian crosswalk there for that corner?
The south side On the north side, there's an existing bituminous sidewalk, not great. We'll agree with you on that one. On the
But if
south
you want to
side,
turn,
there isn't.
if you're on that sidewalk on the north side of Davis, going up to Hartford Turnpike from Whitney, you have to cross in order to walk in that neighborhood that you turn right off. You know what I mean? You turn right on Hartford Turnpike to walk in that neighborhood. You have to cross that intersection, and it is terrifying. And I just wanted to know if you'd have a walk signal there as opposed to just a stoplight, if you're proposing that.
If we don't do it in this project, we will do it in the next. There is another project that I have also earmarked looking at Hartford Turnpike and calming on Hartford Turnpike and Ridge. I am hoping that the council passes a capital program that is hopefully going to be before them shortly. If they do, between this or the other, we will be looking at replacing that light. I don't know if the replacement of the light is here, but we're going to replace it at least in the next one.
So it's not proposed in the project you're talking about tonight.
Rich, do you have that in ours?
The challenge we have is that the signal equipment appears to be extremely old. And so unfortunately, the challenge is we may not be able to upgrade that existing equipment. We still have to make that final determination. And if it's found that that existing signal equipment cannot be updated or upgraded, if you will, because of its obsolescence, it's very, very expensive to put brand new signal equipment in, so it may not fit within this particular project budget. But as Mark said, I think his other plan would be to pursue other funding sources to be able to do that. So it's to be determined. Ideally, we would have, all the crosswalks and the PED signals, but we have to do a final evaluation of the existing equipment and see where we are.
I do.
Well, I strongly urge addressing it because I've had many near misses. It's quite terrifying. So,
And yes, we are looking at replacing that through one grant. I'm chasing multiple grants for traffic lights at the moment. We're chasing our worst of the worst, which happens to be the Miracle Mile. For those of you who may be new to town, that's the area between Skiff and Route 15 on Dixwell. Those are some of our worst. This one is not great. We are having a very difficult time trying to find parts for a lot of our older signals. We're working on it. We're chasing grants. I do have what's called a LOTSIP grant, Local Transportation Capital Improvement Program. That is looking at Hartford Turnpike and Ridge. That's another project this neighborhood will see, not immediately, but hopefully soon. So that I deliberately put this light in there if it's not addressed here. And I did have two questions. I did not miss them. The park itself is owned by New Haven. It physically resides in Hamden. So it is considered part of Hamden. It is owned. The ownership of that park is New Haven. So that is correct.
Can I just ask a technical question?
We can try.
Earlier, Richard mentioned that he had highlighted properties that potentially required slope easements. Could you, Richard, please explain how you highlighted them? Because
yes, sir. Are you on Davis Street? And I'm sorry, I don't recognize you.
Davis, yeah.
Yeah, so Mark has put on the town website these colored plans. So you want to look for the colored versions. And for the properties that we believe we're going to need some sort of a slope easement, I've highlighted the street address. And there are, hold on, please. I think there are, can you see my screen?
Yes, can you go over to 240, like the 140 Davis?
140. Okay, bear with me, please. I'm looking for a street address. I'm not quite there yet. And if you certainly can ask any questions, I'm happy to help out. So 140, yes, sir. So if we look at your property, Again, under this proposed design, you can see the sidewalk. You can see the topography. You have a steep slope, fairly steep slope.
I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see this line here that says C. That's the approximate what we call the cut line. So in order to build the sidewalk, we're going to have to cut into your property a little bit to be able to fit this level area. The sidewalk obviously will be level and then slope back up to meet your existing property grade, the topography. So it will be regrassed and all of that, but it would be cut down lower than it is today. And it might be steep enough that we really need to get onto your property for construction purposes. And that would be a permanent easement somewhere in the vicinity of that line. So once we're in final design, again, with this proposal.
I was surprised to see that it doesn't mention any shrubs to be taken down, because there are shrubs or rhodos.
Right in this area that I'm looking, that we're
In
looking?
that area, yes.
Okay, all right. So when, and Mike Marzi can help answer this question. So if and when the need for the easement on your property or anybody else's property arises during final design, a property map would be prepared. A map would show the exact actual easement area, and the property agent, someone from the town, would come out and meet with you and go over the actual specifics of where the easement is needed, and they'll walk your property and you can help him or her understand exactly all of the features that may not be depicted on this map. So there'll be an opportunity for you to give all the clarity and have those kinds of discussions about vegetation that doesn't happen to show up on the survey map. But you can see there are some trees.
Also in that area is a water shutoff for the water supply.
Okay. Okay.
And I see a W in that plan. But
Yes.
That's typically the water supply. That's easily 3 feet down.
and I assume that will be maintained and taken care of.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Someone else expressed concern about a gas line. I believe this was on Benham, and the gas line is easily 18 inches down. So it's not common for us to encounter utilities when we go through. Occasionally it does happen, but it's uncommon. And if that's the case, we will relocate it at no cost to you, because that would be part of the construction.
Right.
I did also, Randy Teal, you could not see the plans easily just because you're trying to look at it from your phone. If you go to hamden.com, you can go to the engineering tab on the left-hand side, scroll down, and there is projects. Under projects, it's actually close to the bottom. It's Walkable Sidewalks 61-153. That's where all these attachments and previous attachments are. So I do hope that addresses your concern about the ability for you to see the plans and to review.
Oh, no, it's okay. But can I ask an easy question?
Please.
So back on the Hartford Turnpike and Davis intersection, I heard the conversation about the light being difficult to change, which I understand. There was a crosswalk on the drawings crossing Hartford Turnpike. Would it be possible to put a crosswalk crossing Davis there? Because yeah. I will echo Helen's comments that is a death trap of an intersection.
Yes, yes. It's not always done. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. Would that, I don't know if that would require a change in the signal equipment, but a crosswalk the other direction would also be very welcome.
Yes, yes, that's a good comment, and we did talk about that. So hearing it from you and others emphasizing the importance of improving pedestrian crossing safety, we'll strongly consider that. And again, I think that sounds like it makes a lot of sense in this circumstance.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
And also, when it comes to traffic calming, there are other grants that are in this area. I know that there's been much concern and much gnashing about the traffic calming we did up on Ridge Road. So that was very concerning to a lot of residents. It's not part of this project. It's actually just off most of these maps. We will be coming to you very, into the future for Hartford Turnpike and Ridge. I'm going to come to the residents even before I bring in consultants so that they can come in and bid on that project with those comments in hand. And it's the same bundle of reports that have made various recommendations in this area. So we are looking at that. There is also another project on the other side. And this is a much longer term project. We are looking at creating a Mill River Trail. Currently, New Haven is beginning on the Mill River. They started at the Sound. They just finished phase 1. They're now doing phase 2 coming up the Mill River. There are about another 8 to 10 phases here in Hamden that we are looking at. One of them crosses Davis. And this would be at the old, I believe it's either River Street or River Road. And that is another phase. It's purely conceptual at this point, but there would be traffic calming as part of that down in that area and that other park that happens to be right near Whitney. I'm sorry. Yes, Whitney. So we are looking at this. We are taking this very seriously. Your concerns are very valid. They do fly through here, no question. So, we are looking at traffic lights at the Hartford Turnpike and Davis. We want to replace that light. It is old. I don't know if we can get parts for it anymore. So we do know we need to replace it. It's just a matter of where the funding is going to be coming from.
I just want to reiterate Randy Teal's point about the crosswalk. I have the property across the street. So if you have the crosswalk connecting the north end to the south end of Davis Street, it will connect to a sidewalk. The sidewalk exists in front of my house on Hartford Turnpike.
Yes.
So that would be a simple addition that would make a big safety effect.
Yes.
Thank you. We are going to also have to look at how do we make that intersection as safe as we possibly can within this project, knowing that I may not be able to replace the light in this project and I may have to do it in the next. Joseph, I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, if I could add to a few quality of life issues, one of the things that's very clear here is looking at that, enhancing that intersection at Davis and Hartford Turnpike. There's a beautiful little walkable neighborhood there. And also, by the way, you can get up into the park through there and through the back, through some trails. It's lovely. I want to talk about some other, issues, quality of life issues. There was mention of trash. For a little period, for some reason, there was a trash container at the bottom of my property. Oddly, people put all kinds of trash in it. Like, I think my trash container blew down there. And so, we say people throw things here and there, but there's half the people are well-intentioned. And also right now with the terrible conditions, people walk on both sides of the road and then they have to cross over when they hit the park. I'd also say as to entering the park so I see Marshall Road and I'd like to correct that. That's not a public road as far as I know. So I also have a driveway that serves multiple homes and I have never discouraged anybody from coming up through that driveway for safe access to the park. And as a matter of fact, I've invited people. And now as to the traffic, when I first moved here, I did some research on no through traffic. Do you see where Marshall Road is drawn as if it's a public road? I don't think it is. But I'm not going to haggle over that. But my little road right across the street here on the south side, I have never discouraged anybody from walking up through there. And it is a nice, safe way to come up there. But of course, the crosswalk further to the east would supplant that. Now, as to traffic, no through traffic is a very weird thing in Connecticut. I've been on planning commissions in Vermont. I've also lived in New Jersey, where if you have no through traffic signs, the police will stop trucks every time they go through it and say, where are you going? But apparently in Hamden, they say, well, we don't have probable cause because how could we know where they're going? So, and also, if you look it up, getting a no through traffic designation is a nightmare in Connecticut. Apparently the truckers have shut this down. And not only that, but the town of Hamden did not have a sign on the Ridge Road part adjacent to Ridge Road part adjacent to State Street. Of course, that created a million bad habits because truckers, you know, they need to save money to make a living. And so they will go through anyhow. And, you know, there are construction projects where in New Haven, where they're picking up materials at Modern Materials in North Haven and going to New Haven. Every one of those is a no through trucking violation. So this has not been stopped. Also the cartage containers are laughable with those big cans on top of the things. They hit the bumps, and so the town has a noise ordinance of 130 decibels. Trust me, it's way above that. And I wouldn't begin to try and get enforcement on that because it's like transitory. You're going to sit out there at 6 in the morning when they're all coming through and listen to these things banging along on this residential road. And way back, I would say, by the way, in terms of impinging on people, that bridge wasn't there and it wasn't built for large trucks. And way back, that bridge ran through the country club. And this entire, and I see Mark nodding up and down. So
I just had a history lesson. There used to be a very small that came through the country club and ended up coming across at Putnam. You're quite correct, sir. There used to
yeah. So I think we should go to the
pedestrian bridge.
We should go to the water district for a boatload of money to remedy their imposition on everybody. and there was another, they wanted to put in more giant bridges across Lake Whitney to the north with truck capacity, and that was stopped, thank God. I don't know what is wrong with them. They can't spend enough money to get enough trucks through their reservoir. And by the way, that reservoir used to be considered a reserve reservoir. I checked recently. Your water is coming from there with all the effluent and traffic, and it's at best a marginal reservoir. How could they control motor oil? Somebody could dump motor oil into those sewers. And that's why I feel so strongly that, you know, we just need to move this back toward a better, more residential neighborhood. Thank you.
I'm just writing down your environmental impact of the trucks and oil with the reservoir. Any other concerns or comments people would like? Ms. Feinberg, I saw your hand.
I just really appreciated this idea that a trash can is a place where people will put trash. And I wondered if you're going to install sidewalks up to the corner here where you expect a lot of people to be walking across from New Haven and from Hamden up to the corner of Davis and Hartford Turnpike. Would you consider installing and maintaining a trash can?
I actually wrote that down, and I would have to look at it. I'd have to find out about the maintenance side of it, how often we would pick it up. I do know I've been at another town where they would pick it up twice a week, typically Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I would have to look into what kind of agreement we have to pick those up to find out what the mechanism is more than anything else. But I do believe that's a reasonable request.
I would like to ask the question as a resident of Davis Street, if there's any chance that a city ordinance could be drafted to make fast food providers pay for trash pickup within a mile or 2 miles of their location, because you know in our situation at 140 Davis, like every week
Dunkin' Donuts,
I pick up at least 2 pounds of like Dunkin' Donuts trash, And I know that other neighbors like Roger and others are doing the same, just to try to be good citizens. But I think that those corporate citizens should also do their job, and it should be put forth to the city council to enforce that.
With all due respect, I feel that we're getting a little bit more off topic. Mark, I had put in the comment section to get back to the issue of equity in your decision. I think it's really, really important, going back to my earlier point, and I don't think it has been addressed at all, in terms of the fact that on Davis Street, there are 12 pieces of property that are going to be impacted by the sidewalks on their side of the road. Many of these plots are half the size of the plots on the other side of the road, and there are only 4 plots on the other side of the road. So we're talking about further disenfranchising people with already small pieces of property, and also people with smaller sized homes. And I really think when we think about in terms of the gross inequities that exist within Hamden, this is also exacerbating that problem of inequity. And I think it's really, really important when we go and thinking about the impact that you're having on 12 homes, many of them much smaller homes with smaller properties, and you are further decreasing their properties. So when you're talking about the quality of life, you also need to think about the people in those homes that are now going to have even smaller pieces of land. And this has not been addressed. And I think it's really, really important that we take that into consideration.
Ma'am,
Yes.
if I may, my name is Mike Marzi. I'm with GM2. And the property that's proposed to be impacted, as you say, there's no taking of property. In other words, there's an easement that's proposed. You'll still own the same square footage of property that you do today. There'll be the proposals to have an easement for the safety or support of that sidewalk, a slope, if you will. And you'll retain ownership of that property underneath that easement.
Yeah, but you're removing our grass, our trees, our
That's
shrubs on
That's correct.
acres, on properties. I have the property map up right now. 0.23, 0.29, 0.24, 0.25, 0.24. You know, you go through those. There's one on that side that's a full acre, 0.109. On the other side, Joseph's house, 0.57, 0.71, 0.63, 0.61. You're taking away grass, trees.
We're not taking away land, sir.
You're taking away the grass, the trees, the sound dampening. You're taking
Again,
away all of those. We are closer to the street than every one of those other houses. I understand the land is not going away, but you're putting a sidewalk there. You're taking away my grass. You're taking away my trees.
You're taking away land that my children play on. You're taking that away from them, and they already have a smaller piece of property, and you're making smaller pieces of property for children to play on.
I do understand your concerns, but I have a need to explain what's going on here. And the sidewalk that's proposed is going within the town right of way. That is owned by the town, obviously enjoyed by you, but it's within the town right of way.
Nobody's saying you don't have the right to do it. You have the right to do it on
No, I
both
just
sides
want
of the
to
street.
give me a chance to explain. Okay, so there's no taking of property. I'm not trying to belittle what you're saying, but I have to explain what's going on. And there, again, it's easements on your property that are proposed.
Yeah, so this is Rich. So, this is a good example, and to their point, there's going to be, let's be honest, there's going to be loss of trees and vegetation along the edge of the road. The red line is the property line, the rights of way line. So, that's going to be disturbed. That's going to be impacted too. They're concerned about the loss of vegetation, some of which and much of which may grow back, but you also have a new sidewalk where one doesn't exist today. So we appreciate the concerns about the impacts, and that's quite often, unfortunately, the case with a lot of projects like this, where to gain, you know, a new public asset of sidewalk, which many people will enjoy, there are some impacts, and there would be impacts on the other side. Your points are very well taken and very well respected, and thank you for expressing them to the town and to our team. So, but if you have any questions about the particular impacts, I'm showing this graphically. And you're right, it's a very beautiful, narrow road, residential, a lot of greenery, mature trees on both sides of the road, isn't there? So, but I think to Mike's point, maybe the good news is it could be a lot, it could be a lot worse, and we're going to do our absolute best, whether we're on the south side or the north side, to minimize those impacts. And again, thank you for bringing this to our attention, the team's attention.
And we are willing to replace vegetation if we do need to take it down. We can work with you to try to relocate it. We can work with you to replace vegetation. Ms. Feinberg had mentioned earlier, she's concerned about both trees and evergreens. And we're definitely willing to work with putting additional vegetation back.
I would just like to see a concerted effort to consider taking a look at the other side of the street to place the sidewalk where you have least impact on people's properties. It's a difference. It has 4 houses compared to 12. And that is exactly where the park is. That is where people go to play. Please consider taking another look at the park side. It has least amount of impact, especially on people's homes who have smaller pieces of property on the other side. Please take the time to reconsider.
I do believe Joseph would like to weigh in,
Okay,
being one of
so-
those owners.
Some people aren't going to like this, but I have to speak to the equities kind of argument. So therefore, the smaller your property and the less taxes you pay, you should have the most weight, because it would have the biggest impact. So, you know, this argument, like I said, with the church, it is a little bit, has issues. Further, the 4-to-12 ratio is because of the park. There could have been buildings of the same pitch of lots all along the park. And then you could say, well, it's 12 and 12. So that's somewhat, there's a flaw to that argument. So, you know, frankly, this is going to be negative, whichever side it is. I will say, by the way, that in terms of a taking or anything, it's in the right of way. That's why the streets have right of ways. It will impact one side or the other, but I am quite sure that the engineers took into this. And I have to reiterate that that is the town of New Haven property. And if you think New Haven is functional, if you think that that park is functional, if you think that you could get New Haven to agree to spend money and remediate their inherent problems, because it would have to be addressed with a new project, that drainage there, that swale, which I don't think it's on the maps, was a big sneaky deal. You could not do that under current zoning at all, but it was done, and it would take a lot of money to remediate. The idea of having a giant parking lot pouring into a reservoir through that swale is a nightmare. So like I said before, and I think I could back this up, and I think the engineers would agree with me, if you want to put this back 5 years, you could.
What happens in the meeting?
Okay, and we are hearing, you know, quite a bit of argument from both sets of neighbors here about which side it's going to be on.
could I just add something that to my previous comments, please?
Yes, ma'am. And she's, I understand you're speaking about Benham Street.
Yes,
And I did
yes.
see the previous comments that you did put in the chat. Thank you.
Yes,
Input.
I
By all means.
had actually spoken to the surveyor when he was out here. And he told me, he goes, well, you really don't have to worry about it because with all the utility poles on this side, it would make much more sense on the other side. So how are the engineers justifying coming on this side when the surveyor even said that the other side was the logical choice? I don't understand that.
Yeah, the surveyor, that's his job, is to create the mapping of the existing conditions. And then it's the engineering, the design team that worked with Mark to come up with the concept that we're talking about here. So,
but how do the engineers look at a property? I mean, there's got to be probably, I don't know, 20 houses that are going to be impacted on this side of the street, and there's not one single house or one utility pole on the other side of the street. So, what exactly are the engineers looking at? Because that makes no sense. You're impacting 20 people's property when the other side of the street is just plain grass and dirt.
Yeah, we took that, that was taken into consideration. The utility poles we feared would present a real problem. But when we laid out the sidewalk, we're able to avoid impacting the utility poles.
But wouldn't it just be easier to put them on the other side where there are no utility poles instead of going further into people's property?
Well, we're
to
not
go behind.
The impact to actual privately owned property is minimal. Now, when I say minimal, we're talking about impacts to your frontage, your lawn. Of course, you view it as your lawn. We all
You pay
do.
taxes on it. Yeah, it's my lawn.
No, I mean the property within the rights of way line, actually town-owned property. Most of nearly probably 95% of the features that are impacted are actually town-owned features. The utility poles are on town-owned property. So it's very minimal in terms of privately owned property, literally stepping on property you own. But we also recognize, the things
So
that
what are the, can you show me the
Yeah.
exact plans for what they plan on doing with my
Yeah.
fence?
Yeah,
As far
let's
as the
do it.
matter-
Yeah, and
Would you be so kind as to remind, while he's calling up Benham Street,
Yeah.
what is the number, please, so that he knows?
Oh, it's 180. It's 186. I'm on the corner of Vantage.
Thank you very much. We just want to make sure we're getting to the right place.
I'm just
so we can
curious as to what they're
illustrate to you.
planning for my fence and my property there.
No, we understand it. And and please understand when I say it's not your property, we all kind of view what goes right up to the edge of the road as our property, where in reality.
Rich, let me make one correction. The town owns very, very little roadway. We have a right of way that we control for the betterment of the public.
Right.
So when you're both actually correct.
Right.
The property is technically, if that road was to be closed and abandoned,
Right.
it would go 50% to either side.
That's right.
That is the way it is actually written. The town does not actually own streets. We're not property owners of the streets. That's why the liability of the sidewalks and the clearing goes, the snow clearing goes to the owners of the property.
Right.
So that's a technical thing. It's a little difficult, but more importantly, the town does control the right of way very specifically for public use and for public pass and repass, utility work and such.
Right.
I know you're both correct.
Yeah.
And it's a very common thing, but I've been assured by our lawyers not own the roads.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to be clear. I apologize. It sounds like a technical. I know it sounds like legalese.
Yeah.
But I just want to be accurate and clear.
Yeah.
I mean, we're here to try to clear as much as we can.
Yeah.
And I apologize for that. So.
No, that's right.
Rich, I believe it's the other corner.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's-
Okay.
Yeah, there's my corner.
Yes. So you're right here. This is your
And I
property.
believe you've also been hit from multiple directions because there is a nasty curve. You and I have actually spoken about the curve to your south on Vantage itself, because,
Yeah.
and she is not joking about, they have gone through rock walls. They have
Yeah.
rode up on rock walls. They have knocked out multiple cars in her driveway. We've had this conversation. This is not, she is not barking the wrong tree. I can assure you she is completely correct.
I'd much rather see the
Before.
$3 million be spent on something with the speeding cars and the cars that come through and destroy my property, but.
So she is very, very correct. I've had multiple conversations. I've seen the accident reports. I've seen the pictures. She's right.
Uh-huh.
And she gets hit from both directions.
Wow, that's.
Most often up Vantage. You wouldn't think so. Going uphill, she's been hit more and lost cars over this. So her concerns are incredibly valid.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah. So hopefully we're looking at the right property, and you can see where the new sidewalk would go. This EOP, edge of pavement, so that's the edge of road. And this is called like a grass buffer strip. You can see there's actually a utility pole right there. And we're able to go behind it. And then the red is the right-of-way line. So it looks like we would have to reconstruct what looks like a little walkway that you have today. Is that right?
Right. It goes out to
Yeah.
the mailbox.
Yeah.
So Rich, I believe her fence is on the corner. Sorry, this is Paul Brand from GM2. Just to address the question that you had regarding the fence, is we're not actually proposing to do any work that would relocate that fence or touch that fence, or the grass, the ornamental grass that you talked about earlier as well. So
even the part that goes along Benham Street on the Benham Street side, there's a short 8-foot fence section there.
Yeah, you can kind of see if you can see the screen where his cursor is right there. That just the green just represents some reseeding that we do. They'll have to strip down the ground to put the sidewalk in. Dig down probably a foot or so to put the base for the sidewalk and then the sidewalk in. So we usually just show a little grassed area around that to just represent that there'll be some reseeding around the sidewalk. But for all intents and purposes, we won't be changing the grade through that area.
I don't know if I'm being stupid, but I don't see my fence on this diagram.
Is it right here?
Yeah, it's right there where you see the little box.
Vinyl fence.
Okay, vinyl fence. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, there.
And then it turns right where the green line.
Right here.
Oh, okay, right at the green line. Okay,
So
okay,
that's
So we were careful to stay away from that as well as your landscaping there.
Oh,
how wide is this proposed sidewalk?
4 feet 6 inches is the town standard.
Yeah, and I think we proposed 5 feet.
Because of the state funding, it's typically 5 feet.
Yeah.
It does make it a lot easier I shouldn't say a lot, but it does make it easier for a wheelchair to go by and for 2 people to pass. That's the reason why the town ordinance is 4'6". The typical funding is 5 feet. So that's why there is a difference.
And there's a couple.
I'm just sitting here chuckling because I don't see people walking here. They don't walk. I mean, it's very seldom that you see people walking here. I just feel like this is the biggest waste of money from the state and the town. I'm sorry, but 20% is from the town, and that's 20% of taxpayers' money. And to me, it's a waste of money. And not only that, I don't see anybody riding bikes here either. So these bike lanes that are supposed to be so, important, I just don't see it here. Maybe on the other streets where there's parks or whatever, but I just don't see it here. I just don't see the need for any of this. And we have and as far as the, it benefits more on this side. There's a crosswalk right at the corner of Mix Avenue. They could cross there to the other side and it would connect the path on Mix Avenue to the Sacred Heart side would make more sense. They got the crosswalk right there already. They could cross over there and walk down Sacred Heart side. And if they had to at the bottom of the hill, you could put another crosswalk to get back to the other side if you had to. But I just don't see the purpose of disrupting 20 houses property. I'm sorry. I have to say, and I don't think my husband is very happy with it either. He's sitting here with me now.
Mike, I have a quick question. You're saying you're not going to be touching the vinyl fencing or the ornamental grass on our property at all. You're going to be digging up a section and putting grass where you kind of disrupt the area. Is that going to make the driving in the Benham Street area smaller now that you're putting a sidewalk into the property? Do you get what I'm
Yes,
saying?
because they're going to put bike lanes on both sides.
No, we're going to stay within the existing grass area on the side. There's a grass area between your vinyl fence and the existing curb. We should be able to stay right within that range.
But the actual street is now going to be narrowed because now you're going to put bike lanes on both sides, 5 feet on both sides, right? So that's going to make Benham Street even more narrow.
It's going to appear to be, yes. And that does have an effect of traffic calming because, and it is statistically determined through traffic engineers that when you narrow and put in bike lanes and you use pavement markings like we are here, by narrowing the visual, it doesn't make it quite as wide, doesn't make it quite as easy for somebody to drive through. So it gives a psychological effect of a narrower road than it actually is. And the other thing is, once you get below the traffic light that is there up to Sacred Heart, there are two owners. There are literally 2 owners on the Benham side, 1 owner on the north side. Because it's all Sacred Heart on the north. There are 2 corner houses on the Benham Street side. And so there's only 2 owners on the south side, 1 owner on the north side.
Well, no,
And
further down. I'm talking further down Benham Street, going
no, from that traffic light
right
down the hill, there are 2 owners. And of those 2, so there's 2 owners from that traffic light down. From the traffic light towards Mix, you're correct. There are many more. Going down the hill, there are 2. And then also, that's where the people are. To come down Dunbar, we really debated with the design team. And the design team did fight quite a bit about crossing at the bottom of the hill, which is where the speeds are the highest. So we felt crossing at the top of the hill was much safer. And I am also, under another grant, looking at replacing these traffic lights too.
I'm sorry, what was that? Replacing what?
The traffic lights. These traffic lights are slated for replacement under a mixed street, complete streets project that starts at the intersection near Sacred Heart, goes down to Mix, goes all the way down Mix. Yes, we understand how bad Mix used to be. They skim coated it. I'm going to rip it up again. And then they're going to, actually at the intersection of Mix and Skiff, I had to move that traffic light up because, believe it or not, that's actually failing. The foundation is failing, and I'm going all the way out to Shepherd. The traffic lights itself is a $3 million project. And I'm looking, and that's a grant. No, I'm sorry, a $1.5 million project. The overall mix is about $3.5 million. We're chasing continuously.
I'm just hoping that you take into consideration the number of houses that are affected on this side and not one house would be affected on the other side. I just hope that somebody listens to what we're saying.
We are. That's why we have this. And
yeah, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, you've got nothing on the other side of the road that would be in the way. Not houses, not fences, not bushes, not trees, all the way down to the bottom of the road. And it would be, I don't know, to me, it would be easier to even put it in there because you don't have anything to deal with. You don't have bushes and trees and sidewalks and all the things that you're going to encounter on this side, the utility poles and whatnot. It just doesn't make sense to me. And it'll never make sense to me.
There are actually on the other side of Benham, there are some major, that's a big trunk. That electrical line is actually a much bigger trunk than you look up. And there's a lot of wires on that thing. What comes off mix is one of the feeds for town. So that to move those poles is an expense. They're probably $100,000 poles.
Right, but the poles are all on our side, not on Sacred Heart side.
Going down the hill, they're on the other side, and because of the way the slope is, there'd be retaining walls on the other side. So it actually makes more sense to be on the south side below the traffic light. It does sound a little odd. We did take a look at that.
Yeah, you can see right here, we're looking westerly down the steep hill. And you can see the poles cross over. Now they're very heavy on the north side of the street. You can see it here.
So why couldn't you have at that point where there's no houses on the other side there? Why couldn't you cross over at that point to the other side and then put the sidewalk on that side? No?
Yeah, that's an option. We looked at that as well. I think you make very good points when everybody talks about the sidewalks being a physical impact. That's legitimate. I mean, that's your perspective, and that's completely legitimate. I think and I don't want to speak for other people if they're not on the call and aren't expressing this opinion, but a lot of people would view a sidewalk as a positive impact, being a facility that they walk out their driveway and they get on the sidewalk and they're on their way. No one has said that this evening, but I think other people, view it as a positive impact. And I'm not at all trying to negate your perspective as a physical impact. So I'm just trying to counter what many people do view sidewalks as assets,
And I did receive one of those letters. I did receive one of those letters on the previous discussion, but I don't remember what the address is. That's why I haven't brought it up, just to be fair to that person.
Okay. I just wish more people would speak up, because I know that I tried to get speed bumps on Vantage Road to stop the speeding that they come through my property occasionally. And nobody on the street would even sign the petition. It's like nobody pays attention to these things until it happens to them, and then they're all shocked. Well,
and we've had, and you and I have spoken before. So
right.
You've shown me the pictures. You've shown me the proof. You've shown me the accident reports of Vantage Road. That is a horrible curve that has been a nightmare for you. I think our last conversation, they went through 2 cars and into your deck.
Oh my God.
The first time they went into my deck and up my Bilko door and hit my house. And the second time they hit my husband's truck and turned it sideways and did $7,000 worth of damage to the back end of my daughter's car at the same time. They totaled my husband's truck and they did $7,000 damage to my daughter's car. So yeah, it's been, and so what we ended up doing is purchasing 2 Jersey barriers to try to stop it, because the town wouldn't help with rocks. We wanted rocks put out there, we wanted something, and we haven't been able to get the town to help us with it. So we ended up buying 2 Jersey barriers, and hopefully that'll stop them. I don't know.
The whole conversation was liability of what we can put into our right of way, and that's where it comes in. But you're completely right. You've been impacted strongly, and so everybody knows. Yes, you're right. You have proof. You've got the reports. You've got the damage reports.
I wish I didn't.
It's been horrible to you, and I will acknowledge that because you and I have spoken.
Yes. Can you tell me, are you going to put curbs after you finish putting the sidewalk? If you put it on our side, unfortunately, would there be curbs put up along Benham Street too, or no?
Yeah, new curbing on the edge of the road, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
In some places, not everywhere, but the idea is to limit the impacts to the grading of the property. So curbs in that area may require raising the grade of the sidewalk. So or lowering the grade of the road itself. So we would have to look at that, as we go. And we're not at that stage in the design at this point.
No. All right. Well, it makes me feel a little bit better that my fence is safe, but I'm still befuddled at the not putting it on the opposite side. But
if it's also creating an effect where the road seems smaller, that's Benham Street, that's going to create cars to seem to maybe slower. Hopefully, that's what I'm hoping to see.
Yeah,
and studies have proven it out that when you narrow lanes, it does have a calming effect.
Right.
Is it always enough to what everybody is looking for? That's up to debate. On Ridge Road, when we put up the traffic calming circles and the repainting we did, and this is from Hartford Turnpike to Ridge, we actually did get about a 5-mile-an-hour speed drop, and that has been sustained over 3 separate studies. So it's been a year or 2 since then. Prior to COVID, since COVID, they drive like maniacs, no questions. Any traffic officer will tell you many fewer cars on the road, much faster, and the accidents have been more severe. No question. Any police officer will tell you that. So when you do look at methods like this, we have experienced it on Ridge Road. It actually slowed people down a documented amount. It was significant.
Yeah, you know,
Going
because,
back to the Davis Street again, I do think that this is a dangerous, there are quite a few pedestrians because it's the only bridge in the area across Lake Whitney. And I think that it is important actually to have a sidewalk. I'll just say that. Whichever side it's on, I think having a sidewalk is really important because we have a fair amount of pedestrian traffic and they're walking in the road. And I don't know what the result will be, but I think you have to do something here.
So if nothing else, we have one piece of consensus. We need a sidewalk. That's a plus. Thank you. I'm going to at least bring one positive side.
that's
Needs a sidewalk. Davis Street needs calming. I think we're all in agreement there. I hope.
So can I ask Mark, I'm thinking about Roger's property and the very lovely sort of sidewalk and sort of driveway area that you have there. And, it really does fit into the sort of landscape of the neighborhood. Is there any possibility of thinking about the materials and sort of their fit with the era of the houses and the materials of the houses, or are we talking only about concrete?
We had talked about concrete. What would you suggest? Because it costs more to put in a stamped concrete. Stamped concrete would probably be our next step versus pavement. It lasts longer, it acts like normal, but we did do some improvements on Dixwell. It's not inexpensive. But I'm looking for your feedback. What would you consider, please?
You may be aware at least that my house is a historic property. It's an antique house that was built in 1816. Many of the other properties on the street are old, and I think it would be worth consulting with the Historic Commission to ask for some help thinking about matching appearance a bit here. I mean, I think that this is a long-term investment that the town would be making, and I think not just in terms of property value, but also, as we're talking about public enjoyment, we're probably talking about what it feels like to walk through and into the neighborhood and approach the park. And also, I think maintaining the historic character of some of the homes. And so I would appreciate it if the engineers could consult with some people who have some historic expertise and think about aesthetics of it.
What kind of aesthetic, and we have at least 3 homeowners sitting on the top of my screen with your video on, if you were to think of a surface treatment, what would you want to see?
Well, I'll say what I have. I have brick, but when it comes to the right-of-way area, I wasn't allowed to have brick. So I have stamped concrete that is dyed stamped concrete in the right-of-way area.
Which looks nice, and the bricks look nicer, don't they?
I probably wouldn't be able to do brick. Stamped concrete dyed, much like the other owner has, that would be something. If you want to see, and actually it was Star Construction who did it, this is between the New Haven Town Line and Moore Street. We did this in 2016. On the edge of the road, as part of a streetscape, we actually have a dyed concrete with different colored stamping. I don't know what the impact would be of cost. I do know there is a cost impact to it. But if that is something that the owners felt very strongly about, we'd have to see how the finances
I do think that
came out on that one.
I'm sorry, but as one of those owners, I do think the major concern is not about aesthetics. It's about safety. And I do think that the question is really about which destination, or where are people are going to, and most people are going towards East Rock Park in our observation. So the question of should it be on the northern or on the southern side is much more important than aesthetics here. So I would, even though I apologize for being on the northern side, but I do think, in my observation, most people are jogging or walking towards East Rock, the park, and we should the planning should reflect that. It's just completely unrealistic to not acknowledge that.
And then if
That actually is where I'm going to. I think I know where. I think.
Can I just?
Roger, I think you two are going to say something on this one, and I just want to insert, when it comes to safety, where the people are being generated is the north side. That's where people are coming from. The people from the south side have the ability to go straight to the park.
Interjecting this, it's the same thing as on Benham Street. You guys are conducting a theoretical analysis about, where there's a higher density of population, but in reality, it's not like the immediate 1 mile density of property that triggers the use. There's so many people who are actually going towards East Rock Park jogging and being, and enjoying East Rock Park, rightfully so. But, the fact of the matter is that most people are using Davis Street towards going to East Rock. And that's on the southern side. I don't mind having a sidewalk on my property, but I think it's just a false use of resources to do so, because it just creates more risk for people, the way it's suggested, to cross the roads.
I have to disagree about.
No, I'm sorry. Can I just finish?
Oh, sure, of course. I'm sorry.
I just really feel that it, to minimize risks and to use the funds properly, it should be addressing the way, we as the immediate neighbors actually observe people using our road, which is to get to East Rock Park. So I hope, Mark, and I very much appreciate this forum, but I hope that you recognize that.
I do. That's why we're here. I know Joseph. I don't know, Roger, did you want to speak too? And then Miss Coffey, do you want to speak? Because I saw movement up there. I just want to make sure I've got people on a list of people who want to speak first.
Yes, please, when there's an opportunity.
Okay, Roger, do you want to speak too?
I guess I think I already spoke.
Okay, then Joseph and then Miss Coffey I have.
Oh, thank you.
So
I wanted
I
to
make sure that I can be respectful here.
I wanted to directly speak to the nature of the foot traffic. And there's a certain amount of invisibility here, I think, of the people who are moving from the respective bus lines on Ridge Road to Whitney. So there's a great deal of traffic precipitated by the need of these people to shift, to figure out their way around who are bus users. And and I have observed them on both sides of the road all the time. And if you really, I'm not going to sit here and analyze a camera, but that traffic should not be ignored.
Okay, Ms. Coffey, I had you next. Ms. Ward, do you wish to speak? Because if I can put you on the list if you'd like to speak after Ms. Coffey.
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Coffey, you have the floor. Ms. Ward, I have you next.
Thank you very much. I just thought I should add in at this point, we're Roger's immediate neighbours, and so the sort of section of sidewalk that he has in front of his property on the right of way section that's the safe haven we get to sort of when we're on our way, trying to get anywhere. And I know some people don't want to have a sidewalk in front of their property. We actually would prefer it. I would hope it would be on our south side, because it will, from the completely selfish point of view, that it actually feels a lot safer for us. I know there are lots of different competing factors for people, but when I first heard they were putting in sidewalks, sorry, I'm used to calling them pavements, but when I first heard that I kind of assumed they'd be on both sides and that people could walk up and down and actually get out of their house and go somewhere. Because I think that if there's somewhere safe to walk, more people will walk. We'll walk when it's safe to do so. We drive up to the park in snow pants, which is ridiculous because we're 5 minutes away, because I daren't walk my 3-year-old up that wall. So I think that the people will walk where it's safe to go, and the more safe it is, the more they'll do it, and maybe then they won't have to drive quite so much. But if we had the opportunity to have an extension of what Roger has in front of his, where we had either brick or we had this dyed shaped concrete, I can't remember what he called it, then we would be delighted to be able to continue a sidewalk like that up from our house up to the park. That would, from my point of view, enhance our property and enhance the neighborhood. And I agree with keeping it in keeping with the houses. Our house is originally from, I think, around 1890, and something that's in keeping with it, looking like a nice residential neighborhood with some older houses in itself can affect how people behave in it. That's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ward, I believe you were next.
I just wanted to ask about one little stretch that would solve my problem while we're waiting around for whether there can be a, stoplight for pedestrians at Hartford and Davis. So if you're on the south side of the bridge, crossing the bridge from Whitney, there's just this little fairly short stretch that's covered with weeds, and it's a little bit on an incline. I have tried to wade through those weeds so that I didn't have to cross, you see what I mean? So I could take the right without dealing with the light. Do you get where I mean?
Is it
you're over the bridge
right now?
Pardon me?
If you're talking about the bridge itself on the south side of Davis, on
after
the
the
west side of the bridge. Yes, I've actually had to yell at the regional water to cut back the knotweed more than once, and I notice them on a regular basis.
Okay, but that's not, I'm talking about where the sidewalk ends on the south side before you reach Hartford Turnpike. On the south side, there's just a bunch of weeds, and you can either wade through that, which is very nerve-wracking. But if that were a sidewalk, and it's not a very long stretch, but if that were a sidewalk, people could turn right into that wonderful area for walking without you're having to deal with the crosswalk. I mean, down the road, I hope you will do a spotlight, but I know it's going to take some time. But if you could just add that little stretch, it would be great. If you should go look at it. It's from the bridge to Hartford Turnpike on the right as you're headed from Whitney to Hartford Turnpike, so that you can make a right turn without ever dealing with the light if you're on foot. It would make a huge difference.
Are folks able to see the screen that I'm managing? Can you see? I think I'm in the right area. Yes.
Yes, I believe that's the area she's talking about.
Okay. Okay, there's quite a steep.
Quite a slope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some fences and possibly some retaining walls at the top of the slope as well.
Very good.
The sidewalk does dead end though, doesn't it?
Even if it was a little path, it would make a difference.
It's not a
But
trivial job
it
because
is a
it's such a
slope,
steep
and
slope.
you can see why it's nerve-wracking to walk on that side. So then you have to cross, and then you have to cross again, or start on the left and then cross that scary intersection with the people coming down toward Whitney over that hill, and you're risking getting hit. So it's just that little stretch would be so nice. That's all I have to say.
No, it's exactly. That's, you can't walk that stretch. You have to.
No. And yet it would be lovely if you could, because then you'd avoid all that danger. And that's such a beautiful neighborhood to walk around. I do it all the time, but it makes me nervous. So that's all.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'd have to take that under another project because at the moment I don't have anything for that. I'm just trying to connect sections at this point. So
I was just going to say it's currently out of the limits of the project that the state has agreed to.
and the other thing that really drove us to putting it on the north side is the fact that Ridge Road already has sidewalks. And that's a big draw down to the park. So Hartford Turnpike actually doesn't have sidewalks in this stretch. Ridge does. So by bringing it from Ridge around the corner straight to the park, it's a collector and brings everybody to the park. So, and again, this was publicly vetted previously in a previous report that's been around. And that's where the majority of the people are theoretically coming from. Yes, I am listening to what everyone else is saying.
Maybe I can come out and bushwhack my way through there.
I would strongly recommend you contact where the owner is before you walk onto somebody else's property. I cannot give permission to anybody to do something on somebody else's property. I just can't do that. I'm sorry.
Hey, Mark, this is Josh Charco, if I may speak again.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to reiterate what Johannes said about people's safety is truly the most important thing here. Although, most people in Hamden live north of Davis Street, destination is the park, and the most logical place to cross to get to that property is at where there are already traffic lights with a walk signal. So you have the lights turn red in both directions, and the walk signal turns to a white signal and you cross. And if you cross at Hartford Turnpike and you cross at Ridge Road, you are safely crossing the road at a light versus a crosswalk in the middle of Davis Street. And I just want to throw that out there again, that safety doesn't matter where people are coming from. You have a big population coming up from State Street as well, which are coming from the opposite side. It's about people's safety and about how do you get to where they're going. And a crosswalk at a light that can be read in both directions, just like it is on Whitney when you cross to go over to Hamden Hall. It's, the light turns red on both directions and you walk across. I just want to reiterate that to me seems like this by far the most safest way to cross the street, which is why every city puts walk signals at, intersections.
I agree.
Well, I'm really saddened to hear this comment of Mark that this is all confined by the constraints of the grant.
In which way, sir? So that I can...
The grant is allowing us only certain ways, and it's not addressing the real issues. And I'm really saddened to see, maybe recognize that unfortunately, with years and years of this, and this is all these efforts are going, like, whatever, 5-6 years, there's no reality to this. And there's so much little response to what our observations are. And so I hope there can be some intervention to address this, that, the grant might be for something that, is very limited, but, I hope the responsiveness to the actual needs can be improved. So Mark, can you please comment on that?
The grant was specifically for sidewalks and traffic calming. I can't move off that. Side of the road, we can discuss, and that's what we're here to discuss. We literally have both sets of neighbors arguing back and forth, especially in Davis. And Davis is a very passionate road, no question. It's a fast road. Benham has the same, and not only does the owner that is here is being impacted by Benham, but more importantly, she's being impacted by Vantage. And this is somebody who has had true damage. We understand people are going way too fast. We understand your concern about the noise on Davis. You have some neighbors who have spoken to me numerous times. You have some excellent advocates. Ms. Feinberg, I believe you said you just moved in. You have some advocates over here who have been yelling at me for the 5 years that I've been here. Today is literally my 5th year anniversary. And shortly after I got here, your advocates have been telling me the noise is untenable. And it's potholes and the banging of the trucks. We completely understand that. The purpose behind was, to connect sidewalks. That's really walkable sidewalks, community connectivity. Those are the two big grants that I choose, that I'm able to chase new sidewalks on. I have 2 grants. Community connectivity is the other one that I'm working on across town. And the other one is, this is the walkable sidewalks. So we're literally trying to connect sidewalk sections. The sidewalk section we're connecting is off Ridge. We're trying to connect it to the park. We're trying to make connections. So I have from Hartford Turnpike, from Davis, that comes up the hill. That's a continuous sidewalk that leads people all the way down and can bring all those neighbors from Whitney, the Whitney side, Whitneyville, can literally walk straight up the north side and have one crossing. And that would be at the park itself, which is, as we've all discussed, is the destination. I completely understand where you're saying, but actually, even with what's being shown to you on the screen, the density that is coming to the park is still coming from the north and the west, the north and the east. So, because anybody from the east can just walk straight into the park. They don't have a restriction of a road. So, park in and of itself, you cross park and you're right there. So I do hear you. And I do have to speak to the designers, and we have on this call the designer, Rich Armstrong. We have the other designers, Paul Brand, Chris Faulkner, who actually represents the DOT, is here also. So this is not made in a vacuum, and I can assure some of you, at least a handful of your representatives were here earlier. I saw at least 1 or 2 of the district people here. I can tell you Ms. Shoemaker, who's from your district on Davis Street, has been advocating for you and for traffic calming here. So you have advocates. We have to take this back and look at it.
Well, I appreciate your response to that and your empathy for us as a neighborhood, but you didn't respond to my question.
I can't easily move it to the south side.
Which is, how much flexibility do you have to address
to move it to a different project?
To address the issues that we just raised.
Equity is a difficult answer. I really can't answer that without really looking at it.
I didn't ask equity.
But that was one of the biggest pieces. That was one of the biggest pieces that has been beaten over my head tonight, and I do understand it completely. 12 versus 4. A central church and school versus about a dozen owners. You guys have beaten me over the head with that. I can't answer equity without looking.
I'm sorry, I didn't
that more directly.
About
If
equity.
you want me to say here, you're telling me, well, there's 12 people and I've got 4 people over there. I have to burden those 4 people versus the 12 on the north side. The property we are asking permission to grade onto your property, and then I'll replace bushes if we need to. There's so many different pieces here. I don't know how to make it clearer, or am I missing a very direct question, sir?
I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't ask about equity at all. I just asked.
A lot of people have. That's why it's one I can't easily.
I didn't ask about equity, and I don't appreciate how you were overturning my question. I asked about flexibility in addressing the issues about, your planning. I hope that you're taking our intake, like our suggestions, but I'm also wondering how much flexibility you actually have in addressing those design questions. So what is the process for us to get answers to our questions?
If you have direct design questions, the piece on aesthetics, and I may be going backwards and I may miss some of your questions, and I apologize if I am. I did a lot of writing down. I will be looking at the chat later. Probably not tonight, probably subsequent, over the next couple of weeks. We still have the ability to take your comments, written comments, until the 14th. We are mandated to hold this open for 2 more weeks. So anything anybody wants a direct comment to, I can put it right up on the website to be very transparent on it.
I think it might be helpful for us to hear directly at this point. Are you actually considering the other side of any of these streets, or is that decision made?
The Benham, I had deliberately held a meeting to put it on the south side. Can we move it to the north side? I don't know yet. As for Davis, I have to really look at the park implications, because getting a permission to grade into the park or to do any right-of-way work into the park is an incredibly difficult thing once the park is established. So I have to look into that. I just don't know offhand. So I have some flexibility. We literally held a public hearing on what side to put it in on Benham. And I had one entity come out. So I gave direction to the designer accordingly.
I'm sorry.
Now, tonight we have we have one other owner.
When was that meeting held to consider which side it would have been put in at Davis Street? Because I, as a property owner on Davis Street, never received any notification on that.
We did not hold a specific one. I do know that there was, when I first put out the original call, I want to say it's about 2 years ago. This is about the time we were even applying for the grant. There was, and they had a councilman who actually fought it. So that's why I held a very specific, and even the design wasn't quite sure which side we wanted to put it on. On Davis, we thought it was, and yes, I get, my Benham people, I understand you did not receive that despite our attempts to try to reach you. We did not understand that there would be such a firefight against putting it on the north side, but we have to look at it to see is it as feasible. And even our designers looked at it and said, you do realize what you're going to come into if you try to put it on the south side. We have to look into that and make that determination. I just don't have a simple answer right now. And I realize that's probably unacceptable to you, sir.
No, it's kind of interesting because I don't know of any council member residing on Davis Street.
You on Davis Street? No, he's further inland.
What's that?
No, the council person who has passed away is Mr. Gagliardi, who lived on Benham himself, who was advocating.
Well, that's Benham,
there,
not Davis Street.
Correct. You're correct. I don't. Neither of the. It was Ms. Shoemaker. Then it was Corey. I forgot Corey's last name, and now it's Ms. Shoemaker again. Is your representative?
I know.
Welcome to speak to her too.
Representative, they don't reside on Davis Street.
You're correct. I didn't say they did. I said it was Benham who did. Your representative's inland a bit more. I don't remember exactly where she lives.
The way I recall your remarks earlier is that you said that a council member was residing on Davis Street. Anyway,
she was representing you. I'm sorry if I misrepresented myself.
That's fine. Anyway, thank you for all of this, but I do think that there are a lot of things to be resolved.
I agree. Do we have anyone else who would wish to speak tonight? Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak tonight? I do realize there's one or two more things coming in on there. Yes, sir.
I just put in a last comment, and I'm just going to say this notion that we could just have permission from New Haven. It's not a matter of that. There is something of an environmental problem that New Haven is grandfathered on immediately east of my property. You just can't do what they did. You can't redivert watersheds. You can't divert them toward a reservoir. You can't have large amounts of pavement that collect automotive fluids and just have a magic wand that fixes that. And I will just say, quite frankly, those issues will need to be resolved if it goes that way. And I want to thank you, Mark. In my opinion, you've been very engaged. I've called you recently on this. I've called you on the past on this. So I appreciate your continuing engagement.
And someone did ask for my email. I did put it in the chat. It has been posted before, and it's on hamden.com. So if you go to hamden.com to the engineering department, I'm right on the front page on the right-hand side. And 203-287-7044 is my direct extension. It's right here. We're give it a moment to go through. It rings through to my cell phone. So, 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, we answer. So, and occasionally answer outside of that. And for those of you who are looking to, someone had mentioned earlier about charter. The Charter Revision Commission is actually meeting now. They are on a separate Zoom. They started last night and they continued the public, they continued deliberation on the different charter sections. So I know that was a question and I think it had to do with something else, but I just wanted to pass on that bit of information. Any last words? Any last words? And by tradition, we always ask 3 times. Any last words, please? Thank you very much. In American Sign Language, thank you. And we greatly appreciate your time and efforts tonight. You do have a 2-week period that you may continue to send me emails, send me letters, send in phone calls. I did read into the record the emails that I've received 3 emails to date. I have saved them. I put them into PDF format. They're saved in with the project file. so that they are there. They've been read into the record tonight, verbatim. So if anybody else wishes, you do have a 2-week period that ends July 14th. I'm going to try to, I will probably take off the contact information. I really don't like publishing emails and telephone numbers and addresses, but I may, redact those and put them up so at least people can see what the comments are. I try not to put people's contact information online that's publicly digestible. It's just not fair to you guys. Thank you very much. This concludes our hearing. We greatly appreciate all your time and efforts tonight. Your input is very valuable, and we've got a lot to think about. Thank you very much.
Thanks, folks. Appreciate all of your input. Thank you. Okay.
Miss Clark, you're still here? Or is that Gustav yourself? That's who the other person is on there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, shall we talk tomorrow, Mark?
I think that would probably be best. You can take off the recording, actually.
All right. I'm going to figure out how to stop recording. There we go. How do I do